New York, Undro p.m. Light beamed through the glass facade of the Hale and Connors building, casting scattered streaks on the polished wooden floor. On the 34th floor, designed more like an art gallery than an office, men in grey suits and women in satin dresses laughed over imported wine. This was not a place for anyone in an apron. Alana Brooks, 35, wearing soft-soled shoes, crouched down to pick up shards of a shattered champagne glass. She had been working at the company for 3 months, first scrubbing toilets, then promoted to cleaning meeting rooms and banquet spaces. No one ever asked for her full name. No one knew she once stood at a university podium, lecturing graduate students on the grammatical structure of classical Chinese. "Yo, Preston." A man's voice cut through the music. The China deal finally closed. "Huh?" Preston, Hale White, 42 CEO, slicked back hair, and a voice soaked in smugness, held up a thick document bound in hardcover. "I bet no one in this room understands a single word of Chinese." The whole room erupted in laughter. Then suddenly he turned toward Alana, the only black woman in the room, crouched beside a mop bucket. "Hey, you," he said loudly, just enough for everyone to hear. "You're good at cleaning floors. But if you can translate this contract by tomorrow morning, my monthly salary is yours. Deal." The rag in Alana's hand froze. Her eyes met his without lowering, without flinching. She stood up slowly, wiped her hands and walked toward the kitchenette bathed in soft yellow light. "Does it contain provisions for technology transfer?" she asked, her voice quiet but clear. "Oh, so you know. Technical jargon." Preston chuckled, glancing at his colleagues. "Now this is getting fun." Applause rippled through the room. A female executive whispered, "She thinks this is a game show." But Alana didn't smile. She quietly accepted the contract, gave a polite nod, and said, "Then I'll return at 7 a.m., if you're still standing by your word." And as she walked away with the thick Chinese language contract in hand, the room fell silent for a few short seconds, as if they had just witnessed something entirely unexpected. This story did not begin with a confrontation. It began with an unusual silence. And that silence, it was something Preston Hale would never forget. The wall clock struck 9 as Alana placed the contract onto her worn kitchen table. Her 5th-floor Bronx apartment wasn't spacious, just enough for a mother and her child, but it was tidy and peaceful. Micah, her 7-year-old son, was already asleep in the next room. On his wall hung a world map dotted with small red pins, each one marking a place his mother had once visited for research. Tokyo, Beijing, Hong Kong, Shanghai. Now that world had been folded down into a cramped kitchen corner and a chipped wooden table. Alana took off her glasses and rubbed her forehead. It had been 4 years since she was forced to leave the university lectern. They called it personnel restructuring, but she knew the truth. When budgets are cut, black people are often the first to be affected, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a single mother, especially if you're both. On the table lay a bilingual contract, bold, clear English on top, and beneath lines of simplified Chinese characters. She pulled out an old dictionary from the shelf, its spine frayed from too many sleepless nights. Clause 4.2. Grant access to source code. She froze. In the English version, the line read, "Temporary interface permission for back-end systems." Not equivalent, not even close. The Chinese version made it crystal clear, a full grant of source code access, the technological lifeblood of Hale's software company. She marked it and kept reading. 10 p.m. A gentle rain tapped at the windows. In sleep, Micah stirred, mumbling dream fragments about video games. Alana's mind drifted to another night 5 years earlier at Columbia University. She had been presenting her PhD dissertation, Latent Semantic Phenomena in East Asian Bureaucratic Texts. The room had been packed. Japanese professors, Harvard scholars. She had been a rising star. But 3 months later, her father died of a stroke and her mother fell critically ill. She took 1 semester off to care for them. When she returned, the university emailed her. Her assistant professorship had been filled. No condolences, no seat saved, no one gave her a reason, but she knew. She had overheard their hallway whispers. She's brilliant, but not very polished. Maybe someone who fits the brand better. Alana exhaled, returned to the present. She placed her fingers on the keyboard and began to type Independent Translation Analysis, Hal Qingdao Contract. She opened 2 windows, one in English and one in Chinese, and began comparing line by line, character by character. Where the English text said Optional Transfer Clause, the Chinese used automatically enforce, not just incorrect, but deliberately misleading. Someone had left a linguistic trap, assuming no one would catch it. Unlucky for them. Alana did. Perfectly. 1:00 a.m. She tied her hair back, brewed a cheap cup of tea, and kept working. Her mother's voice echoed in memory. No one sees your worth when you wear an apron. But never forget, real worth doesn't need a label. She stared quietly at the screen. The final line of the contract read, Unstated provisions shall be deemed agreed to by default. Alana gave a bitter smile. Deemed agreed by default. How many generations of black women had been deemed to agree? In silence. 3:00 a.m. She saved the final PDF. Named it Truth in Translation V1.0 PDF. She shut her laptop, folded it closed, and stepped out onto the balcony. The sky was still grey, but the first faint slivers of dawn were beginning to slice through the night. A new day was about to begin, and for the first time in years, Alana felt she wasn't just surviving. She was returning. Language is where secrets are buried, but it's also where truth is found, if you have the patience to read between the lines. 7:02 a.m. The lobby of the 34th floor at Hale & Connor's still smelled of Arabica coffee and freshly polished marble courtesy of the night cleaning crew. Alana stepped out of the elevator, carrying her faded canvas shoulder bag. Her white shirt was crisp and carefully ironed. Her eyes were steady, without hesitation. As she passed the reception desk, a young white woman crewing the station paused confused to see her heading toward the VIP meeting rooms. Ma'am? That area isn't for Alana. Didn't slow down. She held up her silver employee badge, now dulled with age, and said, I have an appointment. They're expecting the truth. Inside the meeting room, tension strummed the air like a tight violin string. Preston Hale stood before a 120-inch LED screen, presenting the highlights of a strategic partnership with their Chinese counterpart. And as you can see, this clause grants us access to over 400 million consumers within just the first 3 quarters. At the long table sat 12 men and 2 women, all in tailored suits with watches worth more than a janitor's annual salary. They nodded, feigning understanding. No one noticed Alana's entrance, not until she laid a 12-page document right in front of Preston. Every eye turned toward her. Who are you? A balding man asked, voice taut with suspicion. We're in a closed meeting. Alana gave a polite nod. She opened the folder, sliding copies of the document to each person at the table. She spoke with calm clarity. I'm the person who translated the contract you're about to sign. And I'm afraid that if you don't read the Chinese portion, you have no idea what you're handing over or to whom. Silence. You can read Chinese. The senior financial director squinted at her, leaning back in his chair. Well enough, Alana replied, to spot a disguised source code transfer hidden under the phrase temporary access rights. Preston tried to keep his composure. He forced a weak smile and glanced around. Perhaps there's a bit of confusion. She's on the logistics team. She's helped organize some files recently. Who let the janitor read legal contracts? A female director whispered. Then came a voice soft as air, sharp as a blade I didn't ask permission to read. I just read. And I understood. She clicked her remote, pulling up Clause 9.4 side by side. English temporary interface permission for back-end systems. Chinese grant access to source code. Ladies and gentlemen, Alana said, eyes steady on the screen. This is not a mistranslation. This is a deliberate misrepresentation. And if you sign this, the entire Hailcore software architecture becomes the legal property of Qingdao Systems. A young executive whispered, "Oh my God! Did you translate this yourself?" Preston asked, voice lower than usual. "No," Alana replied. "I have a copy of Mr. Zheng's signed note from the Chinese partner where he thanks us for accepting the source code transfer under Clause 9.4. In Chinese." She placed a printed copy of the email on the table. No one laughed. No more sarcasm. Only the rustle of papers and eyes slowly sharpening. One executive leaned toward Preston and murmured, "Did we verify this?" Preston said nothing. A second passed, then two. He glanced at Alana, and for the first time, there was fear in his eyes. Alana stood slowly gathering her documents back into her folder. Her voice was not angry, just firm. "I know. I don't usually sit at this table. I know my apron made some of you assume I don't understand international contracts. But I do. And I understand even better, because I'm not swayed by profit. I don't need you to believe me right now. I need you to listen to what I've just shown you." She turned and walked away, leaving behind a room heavy with the kind of silence that only arrives when power is forced to reckon with itself. Preston stood frozen, one hand braced against the table, eyes fixed on the document as if it had turned into a ticking bomb. No one spoke. The low hum of the air conditioning was the only sound left in the room. Alana had left the meeting, but the aftershock of what she had just done still stirred in every pair of eyes circling the table. "We can verify this with the legal team," the CFO stammered. "There must be an appendix somewhere that clarifies that clause Preston swallowed hard." He knew there was no appendix. He had signed off on this version based on a condensed draft edited for investor friendliness. And he had ignored the original Chinese version because who here would read it? What he hadn't accounted for was Alana Brooks. 10 minutes later, the meeting resumed, but no one truly heard anything. As Preston moved on to present the next slide about Q3 revenue projections, attendees only exchanged glances, no questions, no nods. An uneasy quiet hung in the air, the kind that arises when a void is suddenly revealed and no one dares name it. Truth. Meanwhile, in the logistics break room, Alana sat beside a cup of bland coffee eyes on a handwritten note. Clause 9.4, mistranslated. Entire software system compromised. Clause 14.3, client data surrendered after 18 months, missing from English version. Clause 19.7, waiver of international litigation rights. She marked the 3 lines in red, folded the paper, and slipped it into her bag. To her, the fight wasn't over. 11:00 a.m. Preston came to find her. For the first time in his life, he did not smirk. He did not condescend. He stood silently at Alana's work table in the supply wing. She was stacking cleaning cloths. She didn't look up. So she said, "Are you here to dock my pay for unauthorized entry into an executive meeting?" Preston was silent for a moment, then spoke quietly. "You could help me, but it would have to be discreet." Alana lifted her head. Her eyes were sharp as mirrors. "What do you mean, you're talented?" "But you know how it looks. A logistics employee showing up in an executive boardroom, not excellent optics for the committee. If you agree to work as an internal language expert under the radar, I'll pay you 3 times your current salary. No title, no public record." She paused, then gave a faint, ironic smile. "So after I just saved the company from losing all its technology, my reward is invisibility." He shrugged. It's not like that. Some things need to stay quiet. She held his gaze. Her voice was calm, but unmistakably firm. No, Preston. I don't need a reward. I need recognition. I'll continue helping this company. If, 1. I have full authority to review and challenge all bilingual contracts. 2. I'm officially and publicly contracted. 3. And you create a scholarship fund for immigrant workers. People who like me were once dismissed. Preston blinked. You're making demands. No, Alana said. I'm setting standards, because next time it might not be me. It might be another woman, another someone, and she deserves to know there's a way up. Preston gave a slow nod. The arrogance was gone from his face. He turned away, without another word. That afternoon, Hale & Connor's HR system logged a new entry name, Dr. Alana Brooks, position Chief of Language, Department of Transparency and International Contracts, signed by Preston Hale. This time, there was no condensed version, no omissions. 1 week later, a small nameplate was affixed to the door on the 29th floor, Dr. Alana Brooks. It wasn't large, it wasn't flashy, but it stood as a monument to something unspoken that had finally become visible. The office was just 18 square meters, a desk, a bookshelf, and a potted pothos. But to Alana, it was more than a workspace. It was a quiet certification that her intellect couldn't be wiped away just because she once carried a mop. At first, everything unfolded as planned. She reviewed nearly 60 bilingual contracts signed over the past 5 years. The findings shocked the board. More than 20 contracts had severe discrepancies between English and Chinese. Almost all favor foreign partners. Alana submitted a meticulous report, side-by-side comparisons, terminology sources, and even references to classical Chinese characters, which of course no one on the legal team could read. Then, the current began to shift. On day 10, she noticed she was no longer included in team emails. By day 12, a new contract meeting between Hale and Greensea was held without any invitation sent to her. She approached Tanya, the young lawyer, who had once nodded to her during the pivotal boardroom standoff. Tanya hesitated. They said, "You're not essential to this phase. You should check with department leads." By day 15, Alana overheard 2 colleagues chatting just outside her office door. "I heard they're keeping her just to avoid a lawsuit." "Yeah, a diversity token. Makes it look like the company's open to, different types." Alana stood silently behind the door. She didn't move. She was used to this kind of language. Not loud, not direct, just sharp enough that no one could be held accountable. Monday morning, an internal meeting. Preston was outlining the terms of a new partnership with Taiwan. Alana raised her hand and spoke courteously. "The hand script in this document contains a critical error. Specifically, Clause 7.6 reads, 'It cannot be translated as voluntary data collaboration. It means voluntary surrender of the entire data repository.'" No one responded. Preston stayed silent. Someone from the team just glanced at her and said, "We've already hired external consultants. Certified. It's fine." Alana returned to her seat. Her hand tightened, but her voice remained calm. "I'm not here to claim I'm right. I'm here to warn. Sometimes it's not language that betrays us. It's our assumptions." That evening she came home late. Micah sat at the dinner table, backpack packed for the next school day. "Mom," he said softly, "my teacher told the class you're a janitor. Some kids laughed at me." Alana froze. She sat down beside him, her eyes softened. "And what did you say?" He hesitated, then replied, "I said, you don't just clean floors. You clean the things people try to hide." She couldn't hold back the tears, not because of pain, but because her 7-year-old son. I was beginning to understand the world and how to walk through it without falling. The next morning, Alana sent a short email to the entire legal department. If I am no longer necessary in the contract review process, please confirm in writing. If I remain in this role, please restore access and transparency to all documents. Failure to respond will result in a report to the Executive Committee. Dr. Alana Brooks. 30 minutes later, Preston replied, "One sentence restored and acknowledged. Not every battle needs to be fought aloud. Sometimes." You sent the correct email, backed by the right kind of silence. Week 3. A Thursday that had begun in calm, shattered at 10:12 a.m. when an anonymous email landed in Alana's internal inbox. Subject line: Check Clause 11 full version. The truth is not in your file. No sender, no signature, just a single attachment, an old format doc file. Alana opened it. The header bore the Hale and Connors logo alongside the red stamp of their partner, Qingdao Yushen. She frowned. It looked identical to the contract she had already reviewed. But there was a subtle difference, a missing appendix. In the version she had vetted just a week ago, Clause 11.2 read, "The parties agree to non-transferable data access for analytics purposes only." But in this new file, the same clause in traditional Chinese reads, Translation: Both parties agree to unrestricted access and transfer of all original user data during the partnership period, and authorize third-party technical partners to process it. Not limited access, not internal analytics, but complete transfer to a third party. Alana went still. She checked the document's metadata. Last modified by Clin date 11 days ago. Clin, Cheryl Lynn, Senior Legal Director. The same person who had resisted Alana's presence from day one. Alana remembered last week's meeting when she'd raised concerns about Clause 7.6. It was Cheryl who had waved it off with, "We already have certified experts reviewing it." Now it was clear. This wasn't carelessness. They hadn't simply overlooked a section. They had deliberately concealed an appendix by burying it in a language most couldn't read. 6 p.m. She sat alone in her office. The lights from the building across the street shimmered on her window like lines of code. Quiet, gleaming, always present. Just like the truth. She reopened the original contract and compared it line by line. The differences were unmistakable. She couldn't stop herself from thinking about the ignored emails, the whispers behind her back. The token hires are disguised as diversity wins. Maybe, just maybe, someone had felt the need to delete a clause that the cleaning lady might understand. 9 p.m. Alana sent an email to the executive board with 3 attachments. 1. The approved version of the contract. 2. The one with the missing traditional Chinese appendix. 3. Metadata, tracing the last editor. Subject: Unacknowledged amendment in Clause 11, urgent compliance concern. Her final line. If we do not name the omission, we become complicit in it. As language reveals, so does silence. Dr. Alana Brooks, 10:30 p.m. The phone rang. Preston. His voice had lost all authority, only urgency remained. Alana, I got the email. This is more serious than I thought. It's not what you thought, Preston. It's what you chose not to see. Her voice was direct, calm, unflinching. He sighed. Cheryl, she's the one who submitted this version. I need more time to handle this internally. You have 24 hours. She paused. After that, I send the files to the Securities Commission. Some people use power to sign things that are not right. Some use language to hide the truth. But Alana. She used words to unlock a door. It was thought to be forever sealed. Friday morning. An internal HR bulletin was sent company-wide. Senior Legal Director Cheryl Lynn is hereby suspended, pending investigation into discrepancies in international contract documentation. All questions regarding current contracts shall be addressed directly by Dr. Alana Brooks. Alana read the memo, sitting quietly at her screen. She didn't smile, because she knew every time someone like her rises, someone will try to pull them back down. In the elevator to the executive floor, 3 men in grey suits stood beside her, saying nothing. One of them leaned to the other, murmuring just low enough to avoid HR trouble, but loud enough for her to hear. Thought she just did janitorial stuff. Now she's head of integrity. Since when do we hire based on sponsorship programs? Alana didn't turn. She thought, if sponsorship means tearing through the layers of language you ignore, then, yes, the scholarship of truth funds me. 10:00 a.m. Emergency meeting. All 14 board members are present. Alana was invited. For the first time, I am leading the contract vetting process. Preston opened, voice cautious. First of all, I'd like to extend the board's apologies for not detecting the inconsistencies sooner, and I want to thank Dr. Brooks for speaking up. The room was silent. No applause. Only Tanya, the young lawyer, looked at Alana with quiet respect. A seasoned director, Richard Coleman, narrowed his eyes. So, she's in charge of reviewing every contract now. Do you even hold a legal license? Alana answered evenly. No, I'm not a lawyer. I'm the only one in this room who reads English, simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese, and knows when someone is lying. In all 3 languages at once. Richard gave a tight smile. Clever. However, I still don't understand. Who authorized your access to secured documents? Tanya spoke up. I did, and if necessary, I'm ready to testify why. Not because Dr. Brooks is a diversity face, but because she's the only person who caught what my team missed. Preston gave a slow, affirming nod. For the first time, Alana didn't feel protected. She felt supported. Midway through the meeting, an email came down from the chairman's office. The board requests Dr. Alana Brooks to submit a formal proposal to restructure the contract review process. Effective immediately, all international contracts must be approved by her before final sign-off. No one spoke, no one objected, because when the truth speaks in 3 languages, denial suddenly sounds naive. That night, Alana came home late. Micah was at his desk working on a school essay titled The Person I Admire Most. He looked up and asked Mum, "Why didn't they want you doing that job from the start?" Alana sat down, gently stroking his curly hair. Because I wasn't the kind of person they were used to trusting. But you know what? I didn't need them to trust me at the start. I just needed them to hear what I had to say. One day, they'd understand. Truth doesn't need skin color, or a title, or a VIP badge. It just needs one person, brave enough to read carefully through the fine print and the silence. Monday the 9:00 a.m. Executive Boardroom, top floor. 14 board members sat around the long, polished ebony table, which stretched over 7 meters in length. At the head of the room, Dr. Alana Brooks entered, holding a dossier with bolded text on the cover, Ethical Language Integrity Protocol. Draft Reform of Bilingual Contract Systems. For the first time, she didn't carry her old canvas bag. She wore a black blazer, her hair tied neatly, and silver-rimmed glasses on her face. Not to look like someone else, but to show them that she was still herself, just in the right place. She began with a slide, 2 versions of the same contract, one in English, one in Chinese. This, she said, is the document that Hale and Connors almost signed a month ago. The board approved the version on the left. The one on the right nearly made us violate international trade law. No one interrupted. It wasn't because we lacked lawyers, she continued. It was because language was not respected as a system of power control. She clicked to the next slide. A new flowchart appeared clearly marked 1. Internal Legal Linguistics Team, independent from the legal department. 2. Every bilingual contract must go through 3 layers of review: legal, linguistic, and ethical. 3. AI-based semantic discrepancy detection, but always with a human final check. A board member raised a hand. Wouldn't that slow down the approval process? Alana nodded. Yes, but that delay buys back what you've been losing: investor trust and control over your data. The following slide showed a personnel list, not layoffs, new hires. A woman of African descent, former community interpreter. A Vietnamese man was dismissed from a research institute for lack of standardized communication. A single immigrant mother currently working as a high school librarian. The board remained silent. These are people who were pushed out of the workforce, Alana said, because they didn't fit the mold. But language doesn't belong to molds. It belongs to listening. And I want to build a team that knows how to listen in 3, 4, and 5 languages, not to show off skills, but to protect the truth. After the meeting, Preston caught up to her in the hallway. You know, he said, these proposals, they'll ruffle feathers, especially Cheryl. She may be suspended, but she still has shares. Alana stopped. Her gaze wasn't angry, just clear. I'm not rewriting the process to please anyone. I'm rewriting it so no one has to pretend not to understand again. In the following weeks, the soft purge began. Old contracts were reopened and reviewed in all 3 languages. Previously rushed translations were suspended. A 6-person team was handpicked by Alana not through HR, but through interviews, in their native languages. At first, chaos. Mid-level managers grumbled, "She's changing everything." Anonymous emails circulated with subject lines like, "From janitor to judge." Who gave her this power? Then, another message surfaced from Tanya Ramirez herself, posted to the company forum. No one gave her power. She built it. 1 translation at a time. 1 accurate sentence at a time. 1 moment of courage when others stayed silent. By the end of the month, legal was required to collaborate with the ethical language team on every new contract. Final oversight. Dr. Alana Brooks. Not everyone begins under bright lights. Some begin in the footnotes, but end up rewriting the largest lines in the rules of a world that once denied their place in it. 2 months after the reform, Hale and Connor's reputation soared. Articles in Forbes, Financial Times, and Harvard Business Review called it the global standard for linguistic transparency in international commerce. And Alana Brooks, once listed among the cleaning staff, was now in bold font on the invitation: International Business Ethics Conference, Geneva, Switzerland. Keynote speaker, Dr. Alana Brooks, Director of Integrity and Language Ethics, Hale and Connors. That evening, Alana sat in her office, reading over her speech. She began with a single simple line: "Language is not just for negotiation, it is for expressing dignity." Micah, sitting beside her doing homework, chuckled, "Mom, are you going to say to the world what you always say to me at night?" She laughed, pulling him gently into her arms. "No, I'm going to say it, so they stop making kids like you grow up in silence." 3 days before her flight to Geneva, Tanya knocked on her door. Her usual calm was gone. She handed Alana a thick black folder labeled Confidential, Level 3. "You need to see this," Tanya said. "It's not in the system. Someone's trying to keep it off the radar." Alana opened it. A partnership contract with a data mining firm in Myanmar. Clear red flags. Vague language around access to biometric data. An appendix in Burmese untranslated. And 1 small line in simplified Chinese. The partner retains full authority over data processing. Total control. No limits. No ethical guardrails. "You didn't approve this, did you?" Tanya asked. Alana said nothing. No, she hadn't even seen it. It had been signed before Cheryl's suspension, but reactivated 2 weeks ago. By a newly promoted VP quietly, a name that had never appeared in key meetings, Jonathan Creed. That night, Alana reviewed the documents in all 3 languages: English, Chinese, Burmese. What she found wasn't just mistranslation. It was an intentional omission, like a small incision in the financial artery of the company. If this contract were to surface after the Geneva speech, everything Hale and Connors had rebuilt, and everything her name now stood for, would be swept into an international scandal. At dawn, she sent an urgent email to the board. A contract that bypassed ethical language review is being reactivated. I request immediate suspension pending a full audit. If not, I will disclose this at Geneva as a case study of what should never happen. Dr. Alana Brooks. 1 hour later, Preston called. This time, no charm, no detours. You have enough evidence to force a pause, but Creed has serious investor backing. If you go public, the board will split. Alana answered calm, unshaken. I'm not protecting the board. I'm protecting the trust I built with my life from the mop to the microphone. That afternoon, the board convened in a closed-door meeting. Results. The Myanmar contract was suspended indefinitely. Jonathan Creed was placed under investigation for bypassing compliance. Dr. Alana Brooks was granted full authority to audit all contracts signed in the past 6 months. When you stand for truth, some people will step down to make room, and some will try to pull you back. But the most crucial thing, it is not to step back. Geneva, Switzerland. The glass auditorium of the International Business Ethics Conference overlooked the snow-covered Alps. Nearly 400 delegates from 53 countries representing the world's largest corporations sat in a circle, no stage, no throne. Dr. Alana Brooks stepped onto the modest platform in the center. No music, no spotlight. Just her voice, low, clear, and unmistakably human. She began not with data, but with a story. 4 years ago, I was cleaning floors in a building where billion-dollar contracts were signed weekly. No one asked if I could read Chinese. No one asked about my degree. They just needed me to clean up what others left behind. A pause. She continued. But I began to notice what others didn't. Wrong words, hidden meanings. And I asked myself, if the truth lives in a language no one understands, is it still the truth for all she told of Clause 9.4, the hidden appendix, the anonymous email, the whispers behind her back? She didn't name anyone. She didn't seek revenge. She revealed a fact. Dangerous contracts do not threaten us. We are threatened by the habit of not reading carefully, and worse still, by the habit of not trusting those who do read carefully, when they don't look like us. In the front row, Micah sat silently in his small suit eyes on his mother. He didn't clap. He didn't need to, because in that moment he understood. His mother didn't just translate between languages, she also taught him. She translated how the world treated her, the presence of people like them. She ended with one short line in 3 languages. English language is power, but only if we use it to listen. Mother tongue, ngonang, la qui nlc. Nich ng chi, kita zung no l ng nge. The room held its breath for several seconds. Then, they stood, not for fame, but for what was right. The following month, the United Nations formally invited her to serve as senior advisor for the Global Language Transparency Program. Hale and Connors became the model standard for bilingual ethics in international trade. And Alana, she still went to work each day, still walked Micah to school, still carried her old canvas bag. Inside books, pens, and truths. The world hadn't finished reading. I didn't shout to be heard. I read carefully until no one could deny what I saw.